To be completely honest, I don't think what I said was wrong at all. I shared a perspective, one that challenges people to reflect on their own choices. And that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, he says.
What perspective did he share? What perspective is that of I'm the hero of
I'm rich and you're poor, ha ha ha.
I'm rich
ha,
and
ha.
you're poor, get some perspective. I knew that, bro.
Bro, I know.
You have to walk past first class to get to economy.
You
Like, they
know?
make you do that
Yeah,
so that
so you
you'll
can
want
see.
it. Yeah.
Not content with one viral moment, Jake tried the same trick days later, posting another epiphany from the Emirates first class lounge, looking down at economy passengers.
So that's just his thing. He just thinks you're an idiot if you're flying economy.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, depends where you're going.
you know.
People are entitled to their sexual proclivities. You know, I mean, let there be 1,000 blossoms bloom. But I ain't spending any time on it. But I ain't spending any time on it. But I ain't spending any time on it. Let there be 1,000 blossoms bloom. But I ain't spending any time on it.
Hi, Yanni.
Hey, Karen.
How's it going?
It's going really well. I'm in the guest chair. I'm going to learn something today.
You are. It's my episode today. A long-awaited episode. Very
What-
exciting stuff.
How long have you been working on this one, Key?
Ah, God. Like, in terms of time that we can, like, observe,
That's a crazy thing to say.
yeah, I'd have to say months at this point.
But
which
really
is
your whole life.
really my whole life, and, like, functionally, if we were to count, like, the hours, probably, like, I don't know, like, 15 hours, just, like,
Hell yeah.
spread out over multiple weeks.
Hell yeah.
You know?
How much Hansard did you read?
Thankfully, not as much.
Not as much Hansard.
Yeah, and I should probably just, you know, drop the subterfuge a little bit here and say, today we're going to be talking about Penny Wong.
Here we are.
Yeah, so I hope you're ready.
I'm ready. I'm excited. I'm really keen to hear what you've got for me about Penny. Is it Penelope?
It is Penelope.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, about...
let me tell you a little thing.
Let's learn a little about Penny Wong. Yeah,
Let me tell you something.
because like I only know probably what everyone knows. Like I know she's Asian.
Correct.
She is Asian.
I know she's queer,
Correct.
We're going to talk about how to tell if a girl is lesbian.
and I know she's on the Labour Party,
Correct.
and that's probably what most people know.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's get into it. Penelope Yingyen Wong was born on 5 November 1968. So that makes her a Scorpio in the year of the monkey.
In the year of the monkey,
Year of the monkey. A great year, probably.
I like most of the monkeys that I've met in my life.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How many have you met?
18, 19, 25. You know, a monkey once stole a microphone from a event that was happening at a field next to my cousin's house. And you could just hear the guy speaking, and then you could just hear like scrambling noises, and then just like laughing noises. Well, I guess monkey noises, and then it just like dropped it somewhere.
Incredible stuff.
And they kept going.
Amazing. Well, I hope that doesn't happen today.
No, but all right. So Penny, year of the monkey.
Exactly. So she's born in the city of Kota Kinabalu in Malaysia.
Good morning from Kota Kinabalu.
She immigrated to Australia as a child with her mother and younger brother after her parents' divorce. From this point, she's raised in Adelaide and attends primary school, high school, and university in the city.
Well named for a woman.
While at uni, she works part-time as an industrial officer with the Construction, Forestry, Mining and Energy Union. And in 1995, she moves to Sydney to work with the Labor government on forest policy. A year later, she moves back to Adelaide and works as a lawyer for a few years and does some more union work. In 2001, Penny runs for and is elected as a senator for South Australia, a position she has held for the last 24 years.
This is a long time ago.
Yeah, she's had a bunch of ministerial portfolios, including Minister for Climate Change, Minister for Finance and Deregulation, Leader of the Opposition in the Senate, Shadow Foreign Minister, and finally, Leader of the Senate and Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Oh, that's so many things, and like Labor's not been in power for like most of that time.
No.
So but like also it's not like ScoMo was doing that many at once.
You know, which, oh, God.
The alternative explanation is that the former Prime Minister just didn't remember being appointed Treasurer of the Commonwealth of Australia.
You know what's funny? Complete sidebar, I can't think about Scott Morrison and not think about those stupid fucking edited shoes on his website. Do you remember this?
Oh my god.
Where they edited, like, lovely white sneakers onto
Yeah.
his feet, and it looked fucked up because it was so clearly photoshopped.
Yeah, they made him gleaming.
Yeah.
They turned it in Peter Dutton's head.
Egg mode.
Egg mode.
So with all that to say,
Yes.
it brings us to today.
Damn.
And yeah, I think that about wraps up the episode.
All right, nice episode, everyone.
Yeah, thoughts on Penny Wong, Yanni?
I think it's pretty cool how she held all those positions. I think it's kind of interesting. She's from Adelaide, the worst Australian capital city, and her middle name is Ying Yen.
Yes.
All right, that's all we got.
Yeah, perfect. All right, call it a day.
Bye, everyone.
But I guess I could go a little more detail.
Yeah,
I
I
could do a
mean-
little bit more.
We set up the whole studio.
Yeah, it'd be a shame to kind of stop now.
We hired all these monkeys.
We hired all these monkeys. Don't touch my microphone. All right, okay. I might talk a little longer just to keep the monkeys calm. If
Yes.
that sounds good to you.
Yes, of course.
All right, great. So today is part 1 of the Penny Wong story. Kind of.
Kind of.
Yes. Like, it's definitely part 1, but it's less of a story and more of a analysis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. There's a quote from Penny Wong in 2022 on the Asian Australian Project website, an organisation dedicated to exploring and empowering Asian Australians and their experiences.
Damn, the Asian Australian Project sounds like just a poor part of Cabramatta.
Fuck. When asked about how her cultural background has shaped her, she says this.
Hi, everyone. I'm Penny Wong.
Hi, Penny.
I think it's been central to my personal and perceived identity, and of course, the latter means it's been a vector for abuse and discrimination. In that way, it is defining, because your response to that is such a central part of your identity and your work. It's interesting over time, actually. When I first went into Parliament, I had a lot more grief about being Asian.
We are in danger of being swamped by Asians.
And then through the Gillard period, I got more grief about being female.
I'm over this lying cow Gillard.
And then through marriage equality, I got grief about being gay.
Homosexuality, how do you feel about that?
I probably feel a bit threatened.
Yeah, so it's through this kind of framework of identity, that being ethnicity, gender, and sexuality, that I'd like to explore Penny Wong's life and career in Australian politics.
That's fine. I see what you mean by an analysis. That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about race.
Gert and Lockie Kennedy really lighting it up
which
at
one fastest?
the Stillwell gift recently.
Wow, really?
That's what races are called. They're called gifts.
Gifts?
Because someone pays for that race to happen, because why else would there be a race? It's just an
I mean, you're
endearment.
right, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right, well, let's talk about Penny Wong's gift.
Yeah, my gift is my race. People
Yeah.
are always like, oh, your skin's so brown, you're so lucky, you don't have to use tanning products.
I was like, yeah, thanks, it is genetic.
Yep, I'm lucky.
Thanks. So, firstly of all, Penny Wong is mixed race, which to some of our listeners might come as a bit of a surprise.
To me came as a surprise when you mentioned it a few days ago.
Yeah. So I myself assumed that by her appearance, that she was just ethnically Chinese. But that's not the whole story, in more ways than one.
I mean, a lot of Australians assume most people who look roughly like Penny Wong are ethnically Chinese, even if they're, from Kazakhstan.
From anywhere else.
Anywhere else, yeah.
Pretty much. Penny's mother, Adelaide born and bred Barbara Jane Chapman, who just goes by Jane.
Penny Wong's mother is named Barbara Chapman?
Yes. Well, she goes by Jane, so Jane Chapman. Yes.
Jane Chapman.
Barbara Jane Chapman. Jane hails from a long lineage that runs all the way back to the very founding of Adelaide in 1836.
Really?
Yes.
Penny Wong's got way deeper roots than I realized in Australia.
It's kind of insane.
Yeah, that's like a solid 150 more years than I would have anticipated.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So Samuel Chapman, his wife Charlotte, and his daughter, coincidentally also named Charlotte, because I guess there were just only so many names back then.
You don't hear about girls being named for their mothers.
No.
Because moms are usually reasonable. They wouldn't do that to a kid.
Why would you do that to a child?
Yeah. It's just like, oh, hey, we have the same name. Everything you do is a reflection of me. Uh-oh.
These three were among the original colonists who made the months-long journey from England to South Australia in search of a new life. Now, Adelaide is a unique city in this respect, as it is the only Australian capital not founded on convict settlement.
Yeah, that's why they all sound so posh.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. So Samuel was a tradesman who established himself with the new colony through various businesses. He was a shopkeeper, a tavern owner, and a cabinet maker. His involvement in the early community elevated the Chapmans both financially and socially, and at the time of his death in 1882, his obituary read, We have to record the death of another of the rapidly diminishing band of colonists who witnessed the proclamation of the province in 1836 and have watched its progress from that time to the present. We refer to the demise of Mr. Samuel Chapman at the advanced age of 80, who as an active Freemason in days gone by and as a colonist of unblemished reputation was widely known and respected. He has left a family of several daughters, of whom Miss E.J. Hodgkinson is one, and one son, Mr. A.S. Chapman, of Mrs. Elder Smith & Co.
So back then, like, Freemason just meant, like, independent stoneworker, right? Probably.
Like, not quite. Freemason then is still that kind of idea of, like, a brotherhood of chivalrous fellows and such.
Like, it's already stopped meaning, like, Freemason.
Yeah, you know.
Okay,
yeah.
well, but, like, okay, good. I mean,
You may have seen the theories online.
they're, like, community stalwarts.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So in classic 19th century fashion, the original two Chapmans had
Died of dengue fever.
If only.
Right,
no,
sorry,
they had a
sorry.
shitload of kids.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, 8 daughters
Wow.
and 2 sons.
Oh.
So only one of these sons survived to adulthood,
That's
and
probably
that
for the
is
best.
the aforementioned Alfred Chapman.
Alfred Chapman,
Alfred Chapman.
an ancestor of Penny Wong.
Correct, yes.
I had no idea.
Okay, so Alfred worked for an agricultural company continuing the clearing and settling of the land in the surrounding region. He worked there for more than 50 years, starting as an office boy and working his way up to a manager. A letter of eulogy written by Robert Barr Smith, who is another big name in, like, the founding of Adelaide. Like, there's buildings and shit named after him. Like,
He's who we have to blame for all this.
yeah, exactly. He says this. Looking back 50 years, when, as a lad, Mr. Chapman first came to the office of Elder & Co., my first impression of him then was his capacity and willingness for hard work. If any department was behind and an assistant was required for night work, Mr. Chapman presented himself, with the result that, going through all the departments in this way, he soon knew as much about them as the man in charge. And so when anyone dropped out of his place in the office, there was never any difficulty about replacing. I fancy Mr. Chapman must have filled almost every post we had to give. Let me add that he has always had the strictest sense of honour and the most fair and reasonable consideration for everybody with whom he came in business contact.
Wow, well, I mean, taking that at face value, that's like the ideal manager.
You know, like,
Like,
he just, like,
if you know,
worked
I mean,
a shitload. Like, he went and did every job, and by the time he, like, died, he'd done all of the jobs and was like, okay, well, I'm a manager, and
Yeah.
I've done all of these jobs, so I kind of know how this shit works.
yeah, like that's perfect for what you want in a manager, really. Like, not someone who's just in the office all day, but someone who, no matter what's happening, will just make themselves available to do the most necessary thing at that point.
Yeah.
Can do a passable job at any job in the, like, that's what you want in a manager,
know?
in a good.
You can just
Again,
slot him in anywhere.
Taking that at face value, but
Exactly.
that's someone else writing about him.
Yeah, this is his eulogy, again.
yeah.
So, like, you know, obviously positive things being said.
Yes, even assholes turn into top blokes after death.
Again, in classic 19th century fashion, Alfred and his wife Annie Horsley had 11 children.
They had a brood.
They had a brood.
11 children.
Yep.
Just horsing around.
Just horsing around.
They're really
God
just
damn
horsing
'em.
around in there.
You know?
And you know, they all shared one bed. So you just have like 7 kids on the bed. And it's just like, all right, kids, we're
And
going to...
what did the little one say?
Little one said, oh, there's space next to me where another baby could fit.
Oh, yeah, that's
and
right.
so the
That's how
parents
the
were
song
like,
goes.
let me get onto it.
Okay, 1 second.
yeah.
Close your ears. So, one of Alfred's sons, another Samuel Chapman, because, again, there's
Alfred.
only so many names,
Yep.
I suppose, farmed a property in what is the modern area of Cherry Gardens, which is just outside Adelaide.
In the beautiful Cherry Garden.
Interestingly, Samuel was the family's first politician, a councillor for the local district.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's our first political...
So Penny Wong has an ancestor who was in Australian politics in the 1800s.
Yes.
Like, it's not that, like, she's not allowed to have had that. I just, and this is, you know, this is the opposite of being culturally sensitive, but I just really didn't realize she was mixed.
Yeah, you know?
It's
a long history.
It's a long history, and you know, one that I don't blame her, or I don't blame anyone for not telling me this, because I'm sure it was probably mentioned to me. But like, I don't know, I was just like, yeah, Penny is like a first gen like me. And it was like, I mean, on one side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the other side, it's just like all the way back.
Adelaide political and societal aristocracy.
Yeah. Like, they're one of the big founding families, the Chapmans.
All right. So Alfred Samuel Chapman.
Yep.
He has his kid, Samuel Alfred Chapman.
Just Samuel Chapman.
Oh, just Samuel Chapman.
Yep. So Samuel, who's the councillor for the local district, him and his wife Emily had the least amount of children in the whole lineage up until now.
That's up to 8.
Yeah, so they only had 3 sons and a daughter. So they only had 4 kids, which is kind of crazy because the Chapmans, like, make babies.
Yeah, well, maybe they realized how it was having 9 siblings.
Yeah, and they were like, you know what, actually,
we don't need to do that.
I don't want to do that. So one of Samuel's sons, William Chapman, would continue to farm as his father did and married Esther Hannaford, the daughter of a wealthy landowning family. And they had 5 daughters. The middle daughter, Jane, is Penny's mother.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's that kind of history.
So, like, one side of Penny's mother's family is the Hannafords, who are just, like, already quite notable in town. The other side is the Chapmans, who have literal, like, first.
Yeah, like they
free
were there. They
settlers.
were there at the very founding of Adelaide.
The first people who wanted to come here.
Yeah.
The first white people who wanted to come here.
You know?
I guess.
Yeah, kind of crazy in a way.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's that side.
Yeah, so Penny Wong regarding this lineage comments, I always think it's amusing when people have a go at me. You know, all the racists? And I think on this side of my family, I go back further than you. Which is true.
It is true.
So, looking at the paternal side, Penny's father, Francis Yitching Wong, was born in what was then Borneo, which is now Malaysia, in the state of Sabah.
Well, Borneo is Malaysia and Brunei and Indonesia.
And by the way, I am a nerd. I am not a geek. I'm a nerd.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
But
when he was born, it was called North Borneo, the area he was in.
And that's now Malaysia.
And that's now Malaysia,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
His family lineage, for a lot of reasons, isn't recorded as well as Jane's side. However, Francis himself could be considered mixed, culturally, if not ethnically.
Right, okay, cool. I was like, if Penny Wong is a quarter, I'm going to fight you.
So according to family history, Francis's grandfather was a fisherman who travelled between southern China and northern Borneo before settling, likely making him Cantonese.
Okay.
Now, Francis's mother, Lai Fung Shim, who was the second wife of Francis's father, Wong Yu Chung, was Hakka, a group from China with a long history of migration.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Hakka are first noted in history in the 1600s as a group moving from central China to the south after invasions, social unrest, and upheaval. As populations of Han Chinese were already established in these areas, Hakka migrants frequently took up residence on the outskirts or in land found to be less favourable. Being strangers to the local populace, they developed their own culture and maintained their own language. Hakka itself translates to guest families.
Oh.
So this is what people called them, basically,
Right.
wherever they went, because they were kind of like latecomers in terms of settling in certain areas.
Right.
They were very much like, even though ethnically they are so close to Han Chinese that it's like, it's almost like
the same in however way you measure
but
ethnicity.
Culturally,
Yeah.
like a huge difference.
Yeah, right.
Which is super interesting, right?
Yeah.
So, unlike some of the other Chinese groups of the time, they didn't prescribe to foot binding and in general seemed to have more gender equality than their Han Chinese counterparts. And this is likely for survival reasons. Logically, it's more important for all the bodies that can work to be working, regardless of their bits and bobs.
Yeah. That's really interesting. It reminded me of Penny's great-grandfather, I guess, who, like, knew all the jobs he had to do and didn't see himself as above any job. And it's like, the men in this society don't see themselves as above looking after kids because it's important for everyone to do everything.
Yeah, because it's like, hey, we're all in this together. We've all kind of got a bit of a shit drawer.
Yeah.
And nobody really kind of likes us.
No.
So we stay together as a big kind of like communal unit.
Yeah.
I read some stuff where they almost had a lot of Hakka groups had like communal fort living.
Right.
As opposed to individual residences, again, because they came as big groups to a location and then were basically like, well, fuck, we have to establish ourselves here somehow. So everybody would just work together, live together, like...
And just build like kind of like quick fortification kind of thing. Just like some stones on top of each other.
Yeah, just like...
It's easier to do
sorted.
this once than 50 times.
Exactly. So the Taiping Rebellion sparked another kind of mass migration for the Hakka, and that's the more international kind.
Yes.
So it began in 1850 and persisted for 4 years before ending a few months after the death of its leader. An ethnic Hakka man named Hong Zhuquan...
Hong Christ? Is this the story of Hong Christ?
who believed he was the son of God and Jesus' younger brother. Yes.
Holy shit, I can't believe we're learning about Hong Christ here.
Not a whole lot, but yes.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
It's a crazy and super fascinating story. It's not anything we're going to get into. I really liked it.
If anyone's interested in the story of Hong Christ, I reacted like that because the Lions Led by Donkeys podcast has a series about the Taiping Rebellion. And I learned a lot about Hong Christ while making dinner on Mondays.
Yeah, I read a whole bunch about him and almost none of it is relevant to Penny Wong's story, but I couldn't stop reading. I was like, what are you talking about?
I heavily recommend the podcast. Anyway, okay, so Hong Christ sends Penny here. Penny's family here.
50 years after that, so obviously that's a huge deal. A lot of people are moving in a bunch of different places. And then 50 years after, so still within a lot of people's lifetime, I suppose, is the Boxer Rebellion. A conflict comprising of anti-foreign Chinese fighters versus a whole lot of European countries.
Yeah, and you always have to be like, saying, why are you guys all there?
And you can imagine kind of how it went. Basically, it was about foreign interference and foreign
Is opium?
business and stuff in China.
Yeah, okay.
So I imagine opium is a part of it, but it was in general more
we're out of our depth
we
here,
need
folks.
to get these fucking foreigners out of China because they're fucking everything up and they have to leave.
I'm pretty sure that they're called the Boxer Rebellion because there were stories among the British that these Chinese people are coming out fighting with their fucking fists against guns.
Yeah,
and shit.
it was a whole
There's a propaganda aspect.
The
to
idea
this.
of the noble martial arts
or something
warrior force, and they're just beating the shit out of. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
We clearly don't know much about, but part of the cultural context.
Exactly. During this rebellion, the Hakka actually sided with the Europeans.
Damn, I guess that happens sometimes.
And as a result, faced further persecution in China in the years after.
And I guess that would happen.
So the main reason, and it's kind of interesting, the main reason that they did side with the Europeans is that the Hakka are traditionally more or less Christian.
Whoa, what?
Yeah. Which kind of also comes back to the idea of Hong Christ, right? Who had a very, obviously that's quite Christian.
He's literally Christian.
He's literally
But so I didn't realize that there was that much of an imprint of Christianity in China at that time. That's crazy.
It's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
And I don't really know how it kind of developed, but it does make sense to me that in groups that were considered outsiders in a lot of ways would be more likely to have an influence from outside come in and be like, okay, well we can, it'd be easier to accept it than someone who is so established and
already part of the superstructure in a way that it works for them.
Exactly.
Obviously we know about similar things happening in India with communities that convert to Islam or Christianity actually as well.
Yeah.
Who were often out of caste people.
Yeah.
Looking for some kind of salvation from, societal torture.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So this brings us to Malaysia.
Welcome to Malaysia.
Yay!
Yay, Malaysia. Though it wouldn't be Malaysia until 1963.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's pretty recent.
It's pretty recent. So after the most recent rebellion and the previous decades of conflict, many Hakka were in search of a better future. Lucky for them, Britain needs workers.
Oh, I've heard this story before.
Yeah. In the first few decades of the 20th century, workers from China, India, and Indonesia arrive in North Borneo. In the 1920s, 1/5 of the entire population of Sabah, which is the state Penny was born in, were Chinese immigrants. So today, the Chinese diaspora in Malaysia are the second most populous demographic in the country. For the Hakka specifically, the Malaysian diaspora is the largest, with more than half of all Hakka outside China residing in Malaysia.
Right. So that's at this point, overseas capital of Hakka culture.
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. So in Sabah, the Hakka language was considered the dominant Chinese dialect. So with Chinese immigrants from other places in China learning to speak it when they came, because that was just the lingua franca. Everybody speaks it.
What the signs are written in Hakka.
Today it's not as widespread with the rise of Mandarin, Cantonese, and English among younger generations.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will still speak Hakka with family and stuff, but it's not the dominant kind of language like it was when they first migrated and even when Penny was growing up.
Do you think it'd be better if there were 5 languages or each language could only be spoken by 5 people?
I think the last one is just recreating the Tower of Babel, and I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, okay, we'll go that way. 'Cause I guess, like, yeah, when you have people move in, you kind of have two choices as a society. Like, are you going to incorporate all these languages and create people who don't speak the same language as their neighbors, or are you going to kind of get them all to speak the one?
You know?
Yeah, damn, Haka.
Yeah. During the Second World War, Borneo was invaded by Japan. It was here that one of the worst war crimes committed against Australians occurred, the Shouldn'ta Death March, where prisoners of war were forcibly marched through 260 kilometres of jungle, and of the 2,000 that began the journey, only 6 survived.
Damn.
Yeah, like crazy.
Damn, did you say 6 of 2,000?
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
2,000, prisoners of war will march through, and 6 of them survived.
That's crazy, because I've met
It's
at
actually
least...
insane.
I've met at least 15 old blokes who told me they were in Sandankan.
Oh, it's the same old guy. He just wears a lot of outfits.
yeah, bloody hell. That's fucked. All right.
Yeah. So you can safely assume that the people of Borneo suffered during this period as well.
Probably more, hey?
16% of the population were killed during the Japanese occupation. The Hakka were once again mounting resistance movement, and the rebels were able to capture Jesselton, which is now called Kota Kinabalu,
right,
where Penny was born.
Yes.
They captured that for a few days before Japan completely annihilated their efforts, as well as any chances for another attempt. So, a moment quickly squashed. In the midst of all this, Penny's father, Francis Yitching Wong, is born on the 25th of July, 1941. He suspects he might actually be a bit older, but with everything going on, this is what his legal birth certificate says.
Like, essentially, he's, like, born in the
he's
late
like,
30s
I'm born in
or...
the late 30s or early 40s.
Yeah.
This is the date, but So he grows up in Sundakan, in Sabah, raised by his mother, Lai Fung Shim, and alongside his siblings, 2 full siblings, 2 half siblings, as the rest of his family had died before or during the occupation. He has a harrowing story from childhood where he is attacked by a dog and bitten on the face quite badly while trying to guard some food.
Damn.
There was no way for him to access medicine or care to treat it, and so it becomes infected, as you would imagine.
Yeah, and, like, your dog's usually meant to be guarding your food.
Yeah, no, this was just like a feral dog,
Well, I mean, that's what happens when you take public education money away.
Fuck. So one day, a Japanese soldier notices him and takes him to a clinic to treat his wound. The soldier gives him a meal, takes him home, and visits for a few days afterwards to dress his injury. A lesson Francis passed on to Penny was that God may send an enemy to save you.
Damn.
Which is, like, hard as fuck.
That is hard. That's taking my breath away. Like, just the gravitas of that. Like, sometimes you are going to have to thank someone who wants you dead for keeping you alive. That goes hard as fuck. But it's also, like, on the list of lessons you want to teach your kid, like, I don't know if you need to bring it up. Like, that feels like something
Some notes for Francis.
Well, like, it just feels like, just, like, let Penny discover that in her life. Or maybe it won't happen. Maybe an enemy will never save her and she won't, I don't know, compromise a lot. I don't know if that's where that's going, but...
Anyway, more on this later. So, of his 4 siblings, only the boys survived. So the 2 girls, Sao Yu and Sao Ying, were abandoned by the side of a road. Lai Fung Shim had hoped that the girls would be rescued by another family who could afford to keep them alive, but she was never able to find any evidence of what happened after she left them. Penny Wong, speaking to Margaret Simons in her reluctant biography, says, "People will judge, and you can't judge what happens in that kind of deprivation."
Yeah.
And something to note, Lai Fung Shim clearly never forgot about her daughters, and she took part, like quite an active part, in naming Penny, which is why the Ying in Penny's middle name is in honor of her lost daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that is the human cost of war. Like, even the reverberations after a war, you just have broken societies that aren't trying to piece themselves together, while elements of that society want to keep tearing it apart. Like,
yeah,
out of that, you get, like, Hongreist, and you also get, I suppose, a really complicated story leading up to Penny Wong.
Yeah, like, it's really interesting, as we'll kind of go in to discover, like, those aspects of where she comes from, like her parents, their parents, all of that kind of thing, and the kind of lessons that she learns and what shapes her in that way. And that you can have on one side be from this, like, Adelaide nobility functionally.
Yeah.
And then the other side be from like, hey, basically everyone was wiped out.
Yeah.
And so here are the people who survived.
Yeah.
You know?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Hong Christ.
Hong Christ. So Penny speaks about her grandmother in her maiden speech to Parliament.
My thoughts this morning were of my late paternal grandma, or Popo, as I called her in her language. She was a diminutive woman with an indomitable spirit. A Chinese woman of the Hakka or guest people, she was my grandfather's second wife. When the war came to Malaysia, she and the rest of her family were in Should'nta Come, a name that many of those who fought in Australia's defence will be familiar with. Most of the family died during the war, and she was left alone to care for my father and his siblings in unspeakable circumstances, which she did through extraordinary determination and a will to survive. She was barely literate. She was humble and compassionate, but the strongest person I have ever known. Her name was Madame Lai Feng Shim, and that her granddaughter is here today would have been a source of pride, but also probably some consternation to her. How much the world can change in 2 generations.
The war ends for the Wongs in 1945 with the arrival of Australian soldiers driving out the Japanese occupation. Understandably, everything was all kinds of fucked, and the Wong family survived afterwards on victim funds and Lai Feng Shim's pay as a domestic servant for a wealthy British family. For Francis, the only way to succeed was through education. He studies hard and is awarded a Colombo Plan scholarship, and with it he travels to Australia, the University of Adelaide in particular, to study architecture.
Wait, sorry, Penny Wong's a Colombo Plan kid?
Yeah, she
That's
is.
so funny.
So it's at the University of Adelaide that he meets Jane, the friend of a friend, and they fall in love.
Yeah.
They're married before he finishes his degree, and they move back to the newfound Malaysia together.
Damn, that's crazy if you're Jane.
Yeah.
Try and explain that to your parents.
Well, staying in Australia really wasn't an option for them for a few reasons. So the first being the White Australia policy.
Wop, 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 that's the
White Australia policy.
Which by this time,
What is it, the 50s?
it's the 60s at the moment.
Yeah, they don't repeal it
So-
till like the 70s.
Yeah, so by the time that the White Australia policy is actually dismantled, Penny is 5 years old.
That's so funny.
You know?
Like, it's so recently.
Yeah, like it's kind of insane. And the second reason for going back to Malaysia is Francis's dedication to his family. He'd done all of this with the goal of returning to Malaysia to support them and to also help his country rebuild. He would go on to become one of Sabah's leading architects, the founding chairman of the Malaysian Institute of Architects, a property developer, a local government councillor, so another one, and a lecturer at the Sabah Institute of Art.
Damn. So both of her parents are from politics?
Both sides have some political, like...
I mean, that happens, though.
You know?
I mean, if you're into politics, you'll meet political people. That's okay. Damn,
Yeah.
all right. But hell yeah, he sounds great.
Yeah. So of her parents, Penny says this about her mother and racism. You know, some people have it, and some people don't have it, that sense of difference. She just doesn't have it. And of her father, she recalls him saying when she was younger that soon there would be no racism because everyone will marry everyone.
Oh, I mean, that you'd hope.
You know, and it's a very sweet thing coming from, and a thing that you would talk to a kid about, you know, having parents from different cultures.
Yeah.
Especially in the 60s.
Yeah, that's
like
that's crazy.
You know, a kind of a nuts thing.
Yeah.
And a fun fact, I didn't write this down, but apparently it was actually quite common during this time where a lot of Malaysian men had gone off to study abroad.
They go to Australia,
and,
UK,
you know,
America.
And they would come back with white wives, and it was kind of this weird cultural thing where there was just like a reasonable amount of white ladies, like in
Malaysia?
In Malaysia.
Right. There's just like a white woman population in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Well, they're making the same rational choice that British women did when faced with Viking men. Like, oh, these guys seem like they
better than everything else.
They
Better
do
than what I've got at
skincare.
home.
Yeah,
you know?
they're like, oh, these guys like, and they get to live in Malaysia.
And they get to live in Malaysia
with a rich family
Yeah.
as well. Like, if you kind of know, you have to assume that Colombo Plan or not, it's relatively established families who are able to send their kids over. But yeah, damn,
So that's a fun fact.
that's a very fun fact.
Ultimately, Jane and Francis don't end up working out. Nothing salacious.
Oh,
They just fall out of love, and
yeah.
that's kind of how life is. As a result, Jane brings the kids to Australia. After growing up in the tropical homeland of her father, her mother's country left little to be desired.
She's in Adelaide.
Yeah.
She's gone from Malaysia to Adelaide.
Yeah, so she's 8 at this point, and her younger brother, I think, is like 5 or 6.
Yeah, and like, how do I put this? Penny Wong like looks Asian.
Yeah.
That must have been rough. in fucking Adelaide.
Penny recalls this about the other students on her first day of primary school in Adelaide.
They were saying, "What is she?" And someone said she's Hong Kongese. I realized for the first time that my race was something that other people would notice, that it was an issue. Yeah, damn.
Yeah.
That's crazy. When I was young, I remember being like, "What is she?" I guess when I was like 5, and it was about a girl with short hair.
Yeah. Kids are brutal.
Kids are brutal
in their questions.
But also like they're also raised by racist people. So you combine the two of those, you get, she's Hong Kongese.
Yeah.
Anyway.
While the home she shared with her mother Jane, her younger brother, and her aunt Allie, so it's Allie's place that they move into, was a safe place from the racism at school, it wasn't immune. One day, Penny had gone out to the backyard to grab her little brother for dinner when a neighbour shouted at her over the fence, "Go back to where you came from, you slant-eyed little slut."
Slant-eyed little slut?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Adelaide, fucking hell.
Yeah. And, to be clear, she is still a child at this point.
Yeah, this is like a 10-year-old
Yeah.
just being yelled at. Yeah.
Some crazy lady is
Just
screaming at her over the fence.
Yeah, that just happens. Like, you, in Australia, have that person in your neighborhood who will just do racism over the fence at you.
Yeah, nuts shit.
That everyone hates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, Christ, it's Maud again. Another time, anti-Asian graffiti was painted on the footpath outside of the house. Learning to cope with this in childhood, Penny says, "I didn't become insular. I've seen that happen with kids, but that wasn't my response. I just pretended to be confident even when I wasn't. I learned to be steady and still, even when it felt very messy and difficult. You know, to hold yourself steady, even if your reactions are really strong and your emotions confused."
Damn.
Yeah, so there were numerous instances of racism throughout her adolescence. However, Penny responded with a focused ambition.
Yeah.
If she was going to be looked down on and thought of as lesser than her peers, she was going to prove them wrong in every field.
I know someone who's let's how we put it broadly, an Asian person from a small town which is still mostly white. Who, I kind of see a lot of that in the way you're describing, where it's like, all right, I'm going to fuck all you up and just be the best at this.
Yeah.
And, Godspeed, it's better than, it's better than what other people, might have done, which just, turn away from it all. I don't know about better, but it's, it's really admirable to just be like, nah, I'm going to outdo all you.
Exactly.
That's super cool.
And she did,
she's one of our longest serving MPs. Yeah.
But even in school, she excelled academically. She excelled in sports. She excelled in the arts. So much so that she got a scholarship to one of Adelaide's most prestigious schools, Scotch College.
How many schools can Adelaide have for what? One of Adelaide's most prestigious schools. In the top 10 out of the 15 schools in Adelaide. Who's there? But yeah, she has to go to Scotch College. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope she, attended a mixer and got some soda.
Fuck. Anywho. So fast forward to university.
Yeah.
It's 1988 and Penny is 20 years old.
Okay.
John Howard, leader of the opposition at the time, announces the One Australia immigration policy. Essentially, the policy targeted Asian immigration and opposed a treaty with Aboriginal Australians. It was incredibly racist, though the messaging around it from the Liberals was basically multiculturalism is bad and we should all have one Australian culture.
Yeah. This is linked to, Harmony Day. That was another Howard policy. Although 88... So Howard's not the Prime Minister, but he's a Liberal Prime Minister at this point.
Yeah, so, no. So 88, I think...
Is it Hawke?
I think it might be, yeah. So Howard is, leader of the opposition.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right, he's like, if you vote us in, we're going to cure racism by banning Asians.
Basically. So Howard himself says,
"The objection I have to multiculturalism is that multiculturalism is in effect saying that it is impossible to have an Australian ethos, that it is impossible to have a common Australian culture. So we have to pretend that we are a federation of cultures and that we've got a bit from every part of the world. I think that is hopeless."
Listener, you can't see this, but Karen's eyebrows, did the Howard thing when he read that.
They grew 10 sizes that day.
They, shaped and thickened. It was bizarre. Fuck, I hate John Howard. So, that's,
he's a piece of shit.
A historically unlikable man.
Yeah, notoriously so.
Worst thing John Oliver ever did was have John Howard on his show and like paint him as the reasonable one.
Be like, wow, he outlawed guns, and it's like, yeah, and he hates Asians.
Bro, he
Talking
hates
about-
Asian. He also banned education.
You know?
Anyway.
So for those that, and you've touched on this as well, Yanni, for those that listened to our episode on Australian symbols, exactly 10 years after this policy announcement, the Howard government commissioned a report into whether Australians were racist. Spoilers, they were so racist, particularly towards Asian and Aboriginal Australians, that the government hid the findings until a Freedom of Information request in 2011 uncovered them. Gosh, is it all connected?
No, but you can say whatever you like in this country.
You know?
You can say whatever you like in this country, and we are transparent with our information and policies.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
The ones that paint the picture we want to tell.
Exactly.
Which is somehow like, we're not racist because of how racist we are. It seems to be Howard's message.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like,
Yeah.
he's like, if you get so racist, you horseshoe theory back around to being not racist.
Yeah, I guess, and he's right in a context of, yeah, if you manage to fully isolate yourself from any knowledge of the outside world, you'll stop being racist because you'll stop knowing about races.
Yeah, you know?
Yeah.
Fucking, anyway.
Anyway.
So when asked in her biography about Howard, Penny Wong says, I will never forgive him.
Damn.
Yeah.
I hope he can repair that relationship
Yeah.
in time.
Oh, and I should mention, since we're talking about Johnny Boy, he said this in the year of our Lord 2025. The idea
that every culture is equal is nonsense because
Yeah, no, I remember when he said this was like a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that, and I was just like, of course he.
Yeah, so not much changed.
Like, I just can't believe he's still around.
Yeah,
Like-
I was surprised he was still alive,
He looks okay as well.
which is fucked.
Because he looked fucked in office.
You know,
like,
so it's
I was like,
well,
oh, he's gonna look worse. He
how
looks
much more
fine.
dead can he look?
Yeah,
about
like,
the same.
That's how
you
he's
know.
always looked. Anyway,
In the same week as the One Australia announcement, Penny is elected to her first political office. Yay!
what is it?
It's student politics, but you know, still.
I mean, someone has to.
You know, a few short weeks later, she signs up to the Labor Party officially. She credits this decision to formally sign with a party to one of her fellow students. They attended a protest together, and basically, this student says, if you wanted to really make a difference, you had to be inside the room having that battle.
Yeah.
And that's something that kind of rang true for Penny, because before she was just independently, you know, student politicking.
Yeah,
just
yeah,
being
yeah.
like, hey, we should have cheaper fees, and like, blah, 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 and hey, don't be racist.
Very Albanese, very Hamilton.
Yeah.
I want to be in the room where it happens.
Exactly.
The room where it happens, that being Australian politics.
Exactly. So I'm not going to really go into like the political infighting of student politics because reading it makes me nauseous. But rest assured that Penny's stint was rife with boring nonsense.
Of course. Like, trains you to do politics shit.
Exactly. So, but she does befriend a handful of key figures that will go into adult politics alongside her. Moving on, like I mentioned up the top, after graduating, Penny does some union work, some lawyer stuff, and is generally involved in Labor Party member stuff. So she's not an elected official or anything yet, but she is a member of the party, which means they have little meetings and shit. And
It means
like,
you pay to work for them.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
In 1993, Penny is the deputy chair of the State Labor Policy Platform Committee, SURE,
That's great.
and had led the charge on a proposed racial vilification legislation, making it illegal to abuse someone on the basis of their race.
What year you say?
1993.
Damn. That's the year you were born.
Sure is.
You're a child of this bill that passed?
I'm a child of this bill. I mean, it was proposed. I don't think it really mattered because this isn't even like politics shit.
Oh.
This is just her being like, hey, we shouldn't do this. This is like low level, I pay to be here kind of shit. Anyway, so while she's sharing a story of racism she'd grown up with, another member, which is from a warring faction, it doesn't fucking matter, it's all stupid.
It's so fucking stupid.
Anyway, this other member heckles her with one of the following phrases.
One of.
Yes.
Okay.
Number 1, 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Number 2, 2 wongs don't make it right.
Huh.
Or number 3, 2 wongs don't make a white.
We know what he said.
It's highly debated, but yeah, we know what he said.
We know what he said, and also what we know is one Wong and one white make Penny Wong.
Yes, correct.
So, like,
The maths.
a Wong and a white make a Wong,
Yeah,
who's white, but also a Wong.
exactly.
But yeah, no, he said, I'm going to put it on the record, he said 2 Wongs don't make a white. And
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
he went like, sucky sucky, or something like that, you
Fuck.
know? And then he like mimed putting noodles up his nose, and then he like pretended to use chopsticks to be a Fu Manchu, and he said something, like he bowed while putting his hands in prayer and going, oh, sensei.
You know,
Like he did all of that, and then he left the Labour Party and joined One Nation. I don't know.
Well, I mean, this example kind of just goes to show that even in a political forum that she has aligned herself with, where theoretically she should have some support from the people alongside her, she doesn't. Like, people are still really racist.
Well,
regardless.
The Labour Party's primed to distrust China from its outset, from when they founded the Labour Party, like Billy fucking Hughes or whatever. The threat of Chinese labor is the big thing people talk about. Like, oh, they're going to come here from China and they're going to take our jobs. Like, the Labour Party is, like, primed to be a little bit anti-China. And so they're going to, they're also just stupid idiots who pay to be in a political party. And so they're going to see Penny Wong and go like, oh, two Wongs don't make a white.
Yeah, just like some, like, fucking nonsense shit.
Yeah.
But let's cut to the chase and get to Penny in the Senate.
Pen it.
It's 2002, and Penny Wong is standing in the chamber making her first speech to Parliament.
Yay.
It's the usual discussion of the people she represents and why she got into politics and her background. Much of it is in response to the increase in Asian hate in Australian society. And this quote summarises the gist of it.
Let us reclaim the phrase One Nation. I seek a nation that is truly one nation. One in which all Australians can share, regardless of race or gender or other attribute, and regardless of where they live, and where difference is not a basis for exclusion. We do not live in such a country. We are not yet truly one nation, but it is the task of political leaders to build one.
Yeah, so that's kind of summing it up, where she does in the speech call out a lot of, like, of the racism, particularly in politics, but it has a hopeful tilt to it, where she's kind of like, hey, if we all come together and we do the right thing, we can make change.
And that's Labour in opposition.
Yes.
And it's what, 2002?
Yes.
So post 9/11 Iraq War hawkery era.
Yeah. And another thing she mentions in this speech is the kids overboard stuff, which had happened beforehand as well.
Yeah, that the week beforehand, and then also probably last week.
You know.
It's Australia.
Yeah.
Out on the ocean, we throw kids. And the humidity we hide from in air conditioning.
Fuck. So, when Penny is elected to Parliament, she's one of two senators of Asian heritage.
Oh.
The other was Liberal Senator Sebin Shen, elected during the previous 1999 round.
Right.
So,
Sabin Shen.
Now you're just putting words next to other words that sound like things we're talking about.
Yeah.
And never even heard of the character.
He's the first Asian-born Australian migrant to be elected to Parliament.
Hell yeah, we love a stat.
Yeah. Penny says the only other faces she saw like hers were LNP Representative Michael Johnson, whose mother is from Hong Kong.
Crazy that your name's Michael Johnson.
And he was elected in the same year that she was, but to the House of Representatives as opposed to the Senate.
Yeah.
And the only other faces are the cleaning staff and one woman who worked in the library.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah. She probably has like 3 PhDs as well.
In Kate Ellis's book, Sex, Lies and Question Time, Penny talks about representation and being seen. I used to resist notions of trailblazer or role model or those sorts of labels because I felt the weight of them. But I remember early on in my career giving a speech at a university where all these young women were coming up to me. A lot of them were kids of Asian heritage who had come to see me and they were really excited. I realised it had changed their perception of their own aspirations and their own possibilities. And I thought, well, that's actually why this does matter. Because it's not about you, it's not about self-aggrandizing or thinking of yourself as a role model because you're really great. It changes how people perceive their own possibilities, and that is really important to social change.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to kind of, I guess, conceive of this now, given how, I guess, black-pilled I am about anyone who, like, signs up to be in Australian Parliament. And also just what's happened to the discourse about representation since that time.
Yeah.
But, like, it's I can vaguely remember the early 2000s, and obviously I was pretty young, but kind of being aware, like, man, there's not many of us, huh? Like, in terms of, like, Indian people, and similarly, like, Asian people.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't think were any, like, Indian people in Parliament at that time.
No, there weren't.
And I wonder if my parents would have been engaged in politics differently. I mean, now there are, like, Indian people in Parliament.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
But yeah, so it's kind of crazy. We'll get more in the next episode into kind of like the idea of exploring, what it is to be first.
Well, it's when you get there before second.
Exactly that, yes. Yeah, so, I can cut that bit then.
Yeah, I got you.
I'm asking you who's on first.
But before we dig into, how this has kind of impacted her policies and that kind of thing, I think there's another thing we should have a chat about, and that is gender.
Yeah, what is her agenda?
Wee woo, wee woo.
Gender police here, and you have been accused of having a gender. Anything to say for yourself? Lock her up, boys.
So, Penny is a woman, and she's a woman in politics, and she's an Asian woman in politics. Actually, the first Asian woman elected to Parliament.
She sounds busy.
It's kind of crazy.
She's having to do all of those things.
It's a lot. And the media seemed to think it was a lot when she was elected to the Senate. With headlines like, the federal election, Labour's lipstick warriors. Women come to the rescue. And SA senators, we're more than just pretty faces.
Is this... that could just be Sky News talking about the teals today.
Very much giving girl boss, CEO type things.
Yeah.
Like, it's that point in time in Australian culture where it's just like, yes, women can leave the house, but we should probably comment about how crazy it is she's left the house.
That's crazy. How'd you make it out here?
How'd you get out here? I thought I locked the door, There's
a guy who I knew growing up who once got to the function and then locked his wife in the car and went into the function. And the idea that we always kind of heard was like, oh, it's because he was just not paying attention or he's drunk or whatever. But upon reflection, he's a douchebag. I reckon he just locked her in there.
He probably just locked her in and was just like, you're annoying me, fuck you.
Yeah, you're annoying me.
Stay in the car all night.
Yeah. So anyway, there's that.
So when Penny joined the Senate, the gender makeup of the room was less than ideal.
What, their lipstick wasn't good?
There were 23 women and 53 men, with South Australia and the Northern Territory being the only representatives with equal men to women. And side note, both of the ACT's senators were female, so yay!
Yay!
Today that's a little different. There are 43 women and 32 men in the Senate, and only Queensland has more men than women in office.
Telling.
Yeah. It was only in 2019 that the Senate had equal numbers of women to men, meaning that Penny was in a male-dominated workplace for 18 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking on what it's like to be a woman in politics, Penny says this.
What is different for women in politics? Any woman who has achieved a position of significance has been subjected to different standards of behavior to those which would be expected of men. Sometimes that has been more, and sometimes it has been less. That disparity has been greater for some women than others. But there is still always a difference.
But let's step back a moment. As a child, the majority of people Penny had in her life to look up to were women. From her grandmother, Lai Fung Shim, in Kota Kinabalu, to her mother and 4 aunts in Adelaide.
Yeah.
While we've spoken about Lai Fung Shim previously and the lengths she had to go to keep her family alive during the Japanese occupation in Malaysia, we haven't spoken too much on Jane and her sisters. To summarise, because there isn't really a whole lot of public information available, Jane's parents passed away by the time she'd met Francis, so when she was in her early 20s, leaving her and her 4 sisters to essentially fend for themselves. The family dynamic is distinctly matriarchal, as you'd imagine, and Penny had a wealth of women to look up to and learn from in her formative years.
Yeah.
By all accounts, her father Francis also supported his daughter's education and ambition, with Penny's half-sister making a speech at Francis's 70th birthday about how much she appreciated his aspiration for her, that he never wanted less and he never expected less of her than any of his sons.
Oh.
So, both sides of the family very much yes, girls.
Yeah, yeah. They're, it sounds like they're in an environment where they've had to.
Yeah.
And they've learned the lesson you're meant to learn from that.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
At least someone has.
Had to be somebody. However, being a young woman, a young Asian woman in politics, and a young Asian woman in politics who is queer, it's a lot to deal with, and you'll recall that this is the early 2000s.
Yeah, and it will always be the early 2000s.
It's never, hey, it's going to be 2000 forever.
It stopped in 2001.
So while race and racism is something that Penny is open about, gender and feminism is something she actively advocates. Quoted in Sex, Lies and Question Time, she talks about the discrimination felt by herself and other female members of Parliament. She says, the gender stuff is shared. We know what it is. We know the patriarchy exists, and we see that every day. It's something shared and understood by other women. And I think that's probably why she is more vocal about that kind of discrimination, is it's less lonely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially, like, given the makeup of Parliament still is more white people than people of colour.
Of course.
But there is rapidly becoming, like, in the Senate, definitely, there's more women than men.
Yeah.
So there is, strength in numbers. You can call things out in ways that are, safer,
And
I
you'd hope
suppose.
that they'd also then advocate for you. Like,
Exactly.
There's women who have been in Parliament who have gone out of their way to not advocate for women.
Yes, we'll hear from a few of those.
As a political move. And so, yeah, Penny it's the, like, realpolitik of identity politics. And I don't mean to say that, God, sorry about all my squeaks. This chair is really struggling. But yeah, I don't mean to say that in, like, a denigratory way of identity politics, but it is like, yeah, so, okay, I'm gonna advocate for women in general, but you need to say something nice about Asian, and we can get an allegiance going on. Yeah, but anyway, so
so the book details much of the sexism faced by female parliamentarians, particularly during the Gillard years, when Australia's rampant problem with women came hurtling into focus with the election of our first female Prime Minister. Cue the misogyny speech.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. I will not.
I will not. However, I will cut money available to single parents. Single mothers.
And I don't mind that Peter Slipper called that girl a cunt.
Yeah.
Anyway, so for those who weren't there or who don't remember, from the moment Julia Gillard was sworn into office, there was a taste of vitriol in the air. Comments thrown her way included that she didn't deserve the leadership position because she was deliberately barren, because she hadn't had kids, and that her father had died of shame. Tony Abbott, Tony Abbott, fanned the flames of this fury by not only standing beside protest signs saying "ditch the witch" and "Julia, Bob Brown's bitch," but also with general comments like, if it's true that men have more power generally speaking than women, is that a bad thing? And what if men are by physiology or temperament more adapted to exercise authority or to issue command?
It's just
and that Julia should make an honest woman of herself and marry her long-term partner.
It's such a fucking joke that we put up with, like, that for so long, and he's still, in politics? He's still a public figure? Tony Abbott's still around.
He's still a public figure,
but
I think he didn't...
ostracized out of society and thrown into a pit of spiders.
Yeah.
For this dog shit demagoguery.
Yeah, don't worry, it gets worse.
Of course it does.
Vile images of Julia were circulated not only in the media, but to her colleagues in Parliament as well. So through private emails and group chats. Mostly doctored naked photos or naked and sexual caricatures.
Well, in Parliament, like, Barnaby Joyce is sending that to Matthias Cormann.
Yeah, if you can imagine any private boys' school group chat, you'll get the idea.
Yeah, fucking...
And, weird. I wonder how many of our illustrious representatives attended private boys' schools.
Is it most of them?
Well, I was going to try and look into it, but it was really hard to actually get that information without going through every single one of their biographies. But
that's a project. We'll do that.
We'll get on it. Don't worry, gang.
Someone's probably done it.
One particularly heinous one is a caricature of Julia completely naked and wearing a lifelike strap-on.
Well, she's not completely naked.
Well, this was drawn by Larry Pickering, the bright spark who brought us fucked up little drawings like Indigenous man doesn't know his son's name, Muslim men fuck goats, and who could forget the Prophet Muhammad as a spit-roasted pig.
I think I vaguely remember that.
Yeah.
Larry Pickering is this gentleman's name.
Yeah, and he had a massive hate boner for Julia Gillard. Like, if you look at his website, which is hard to do, you have to go through the Wayback Machine because he's fucking dead now, and so somebody else has the URL.
Good riddance.
If you go back on the Wayback Machine, you see how many of his fucking comments were just like, Julia Gillard with a strap on. Julia Gillard being like, I'm going to fuck you, Bill Shorten,
Just sexualized Julia Gillard Dom content.
Yeah, basically. It's kind of fucking bizarre.
There's
a couple of drawings that he's got in there, actually, where Penny Wong is there as well. And it's Julia Gillard, like, holding a strap on, and they're like, I don't know, gonna, like, rob a bank or something. And she's like, don't worry, I've done this before. And Penny Wong's holding a smaller dildo.
What?
Like, yeah, it's actually fucking weird.
What?
It's bizarre.
Oh my god.
It's fucking silly shit. Anyway, so Larry Pickering, huge dipshit.
You are the dumbest boy.
Meanwhile, in the putrid swamp of talkback radio, Julia was called a menopausal monster, a horrible mouth on legs, pondered, does she go down to the chemist to buy tampons, or does the Australian taxpayer pay for those as well? And called a lying, manipulative, incompetent communist hyena, and that she was lucky that we don't have the guillotine anymore.
God, don't make me, like, this is what I hate about this country. It makes me come out here, and it's so vile to people that I dislike, like Julia Gillard. And it's so vile to her in such fundamental ways. I have to, like, I'll stand up with her.
You know, I'd be like, hey, that's not on.
Hey,
but
you
at the
can't
same
fucking
time,
say
what a turn
that
of phrase.
about Queen Julia.
You know?
Communist hyena.
You're making me defend her?
You're making me because you're, like, that's just absolute ludicrosity for the purpose of getting attention, with no care to the fact that some kids are going to see that, take that seriously, and that's just going to be their politics. And now we have the Andrew Tate generation.
You know.
Fuck.
So amidst all this focus on the Prime Minister, senior female politicians were also under fire. So women of the Labour Party are dubbed the handbag hit squad, basically because they're attacking Tony Abbott and being like, you're a misogynist.
It was what, 2013, 2015 at this
is
point.
2012.
2012, they're called the handbag hit squad.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So this is a name given to them by a female Liberal MP and was then described in the media by a commentator as a homegrown version of Gaddafi's Virgin Guards.
That's so funny to think about us, Albanese, having a bunch of hot virgin ladies walking around, and it's Julia Gillard just with a gun.
And Penny Wong and
Penny
Tanya
Wong
Plibersek and like
Tanya
a bunch of like,
Plibersek.
Katie Gallagher, like senior Labour
just lined
officials,
up
just like
behind and in front of just fucking bad bitches with weapons.
You know?
Just ready to fight. That's so funny to think about and so disgusting to know it was part of public discourse.
Yeah. Another female Liberal MP said in Parliament that sexism is the last refuge of the incompetent woman, the last refuge of the quota girls. So it's this idea that, oh, well, you're just saying that everyone's sexist to you because actually you're not very good at your job and you only got this because of affirmative action.
That's so funny to say about, like, the very limited pool of people who are elected representatives as well.
Yeah.
That's so funny to say that of, like, not that I think it's morally good to be in Parliament, but it shows, like, a tenacity and determination and all those, like, productive qualities. It shows that you have those things.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Did the damn thing.
Yeah, you actually had to do, like, it's literally hard to do.
You did have to do something. Like,
yeah. I think it's an evil waste of time, but it's hard.
You know, recalling this period and some of the actions that she tried to take, like to kind of like chill things out, Penny says, I mean, you remember every time we did do something, there was the handbag hit squad line. I used to say to my staff, I don't even have a handbag. So there are more stories in Sex, Lies and Question Time about the constant rumours and shaming female politicians experience from their colleagues, from allegations of sexual favours for their jobs to commenting on how many men they'd fucked.
What's your body count?
Ooh, everybody's gotta say it. Everybody's gotta say it.
Liberal Senator Erika Betz, whose father was a literal German Nazi and his uncle was a literal SS member convicted of actual war crimes.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I didn't know that bit.
Yeah.
Damn.
At one point, he mentions a former partner of Penny's to her face, kind of like to get under her skin and like, you know, do a power play start thing, you know? And she says that she went nuts at him.
Yeah.
Like, how fucking dare you kind of shit.
How dare you fucking bring up my ex? We're doing politics, you Nazi cunt.
Exactly. And apparently she like went at him like real fucking hard to the point that he, like, nobody ever brought up her romantic relationships like that in that way to her again. Like, it was just, there's a lot of examples of Penny Wong in Parliament, because, like, this obviously wasn't a recorded thing. This was, like, a backroom conversation, and she was just like, oh, I'm going to unload on you.
Yeah.
In Parliament, you've got, like, a whole host of different, like, moments, which we'll talk about in the next episode, where she just, like, someone says some shit, and she's just like, no, I don't think so. And then we'll just, like, go at them.
Yeah, she does
Yeah, like, she does have a very firm stance on, like, I guess, the kind of shit she'll tolerate from other people.
In my head, she's standing up with, like, a finger in the air, pointing accusingly, and, like, angling her body in that way they do to get caught on camera, but also address the people they're addressing. Like, that's my image of Penny Wong in Parliament.
Yeah, and, like, that's more of her, like, I think, probably after this, from this point until, like, kind of recent. I feel like more recently she's taken on more of like a kind of like composed role.
Yeah.
And beforehand she was more composed in a sense that she didn't want, I guess, to get super aggressive, but like someone would say something and she'd be like, why did you just say that?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, oh, well. And she's like, how dare you?
Yeah. Hell
You
yeah.
think that that's an appropriate thing to say to somebody?
Yeah.
That's embarrassing. There's compilations online.
Yeah,
you know?
no, she's like as far
She will say some shit.
She will say some shit. She says some shit. Like it's very easy to like love Penny Wong.
Yeah.
As someone, if you're vaguely left supporting, vaguely left leaning, it's very easy to love Penny Wong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Penny's been open about her support of women's rights, from speeches made in public forums to writing policy that has beneficial impacts on women, in particular working women. In a speech to the National Labour Women's Conference in 2023, she spoke about her work to increase the gender parity within the Labour Party from when she first got elected, I suppose.
Yeah.
She talks about wanting to increase minimum women's representation from 35%, which was agreed on in 1994, I think, being like, yeah, well, we'll have at least like 35% of the party should be women.
Yeah.
She's like, I want it to be like 40 or higher. Like, we've got to keep pushing. This isn't good enough.
I want it to be reflective of our society.
Exactly. And there was a whole bunch of resistance within the party to this. They were all like, that's impossible. That's unrealistic.
Yeah.
There aren't that many women.
There aren't, though. Like, when you think
know?
about it, there's only 6 or 7 women.
You know?
It's me, Penny, Julia, Pauline, Gina, and Sam Kerr. Those are
the only women.
6 women.
Yeah. I don't know any other ones.
Yeah.
And basically, you know, they pushed and pushed for these changes, her and a few other female politicians who were there at the time. And eventually they were able to pass it. And it was like, yay, okay, the new minimum standard for the Labour Party is 40% or more.
Good.
Which, you know, super good stuff. And she also mentions that as soon as it was passed, so many of the men who were like, no, that's impossible, we can't do that, were suddenly so keen to take credit for how progressive they were and how, you know, they really believe in the future of women, you know?
They always did. They always did.
Exactly. And so it's kind of another brick in the wall of progress, where another aspect of Penny's identity is, you know, belittled and called into question, and then during successes tied to that identity, suddenly everybody's like, well, I always was on your side.
She has to look at all the people
I was always on your side. And she's like, no, you fucking weren't.
She's like, I remember what you said.
Yeah.
Like, every day she looks around and she looks at her own party members, and let alone the opposition, but she looks at her own party members, and for half of them, she's like, I know what you said.
Yeah,
I know
she's
what you
like,
thought.
do you think I'm going to forget that
You think
shit?
Graham fucking Richardson, the guy with Anthony Albanese's office moving around,
You know?
like, you think he, like, was nice to Penny Wong ever?
Probably fucking not.
Probably fucking not.
Exactly.
Like, how many times has someone groped Penny Wong?
Who's to say?
I
imagine Penny Wong would probably beat the shit out of them, but like,
that. Yeah, no one. Yeah. Anyway,
but like saying shit, gossip rumors,
and like racist policy.
Yeah,
like
fundamentally being like, I don't think you're worth the same thing that I'm worth.
Yeah.
Like, that's an insane thing to have come from someone who's meant to be an ally.
Yeah, like someone who's
not just a colleague, like an ally.
But
in this
they're
shit.
not a factional ally.
No,
they're not.
And
that's the thing.
All that extra bullshit. Anyway, Penny's a pretty frequent talker, speaker, speecher, whatever, in rotation for women-focused events and conferences. She's spoken at National Women's Labour Conference, Women in Banking and Finance, Women in Leadership stuff, International Women's Day stuff. Like, she does the whole kind of gamut. She talks at universities, forums, whatever.
Yeah.
A quote from Penny about how she approaches conversations with younger women regarding gender equity is, I always say to younger women that you can make a decision not to be interested in politics, but you can never make a decision not to be affected by it. And I think that is another thing about her, a through line that carries her through in a lot of the things that she does and decisions she makes, is that you don't have to care about this, but you will be impacted by it just based on who you are and what these policies are.
Unless you're rich.
Unless you're rich, in which case, yeah.
You can run away from anything.
Exactly.
But yeah.
So I guess it's time to tackle the third head of our identity hydra.
Hell yeah.
Which is sexuality.
Oh, I thought it was going to be something really different.
But that's for next time, actually.
Oh.
So next time we're going to be discussing sexuality, Penny's actions in Parliament and the policies she supports, and wrapping up with a good old gab about identity, idolatry, and what it means to be first.
That sounds really fascinating. I learned a lot. I learned so much. That was really interesting, and I'm really excited to like get into that side of things because that's like
Today's a lot of setup. Today is a lot of history and setup before we can kind of be like, okay, well, what does all this mean?
Yeah, but
'cause otherwise this episode would have been like 2 hours long.
No, but that was so interesting. Like I just even from because you I guess let slip in sometime in the last couple of weeks that like Penny Wong is mixed, and I was like, wait, what? Which is so silly. Like I want to be clear, that's not something that a healthy person is thinking about, like whether or not Penny Wong is mixed race, or even if race is a real thing. None of that's healthy, but like I would not have known that half her family's white. Like that means someone's there to teach you how these people talk. Yeah. That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
Anyway, but her, like much of it's what I kind of expected. Like she's kind of the anti-Peter Dutton in a way.
Yes. Yeah.
She's the opposite of a head kicker. She is like an extremely calm.
She's very precision, I think.
Yeah.
Like I think, and we'll talk more about this next time, but I think a lot of her experiences and a lot of kind of the challenges she's grown up with have led her to be like, okay, well, I have to be so precise and decisive and exacting in everything that I do because it's all going to be a reflection and not just of me.
Yeah, it's going to be a reflection on all queer people, all women, and all Asian people.
Yeah.
That is...
not a big deal or anything, right?
What? So, okay, half the country is already women, but also... So how much of the country is Asian men? That's probably like 7% of the country is 57. And how many people who aren't women and aren't Asian men are queer? So probably like another like 4. That's like 60% of the country.
Yeah.
She can't let them down at any moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of fucking nuts.
But
we'll talk about it more next time.
We'll talk about it more next time. Are we going to talk about the book as well next time?
Yes, we'll talk more about the book as well. I've got a little taster for you all. I read Passion and Principle by Margaret Simons, which is the Penny Wong biography. I didn't like it. I'll tell you more later.
Well, for the time being, thank you very much, Kieran, for putting that all together, for writing such a wonderful episode. I hope you all enjoyed it at home. That's been episode something or other, maybe 16. Penny Wong Part 1 of Shouldn't Have Come. Shouldn't Have Come. Oh my goodness, Shouldn't Have Come.
Shouldn't Have Come.
Shouldn't Have Come. With Little Wayne. That's been Shouldn't Have Come. Thank you very much for joining us today. If you'd like to follow what we're doing, you can subscribe to Shouldn't Have Come on Instagram. That's SHOULDNTACOME. So the word shouldn't with an A at the end. You can also follow us on Patreon. Same thing, Shouldn't Have Come. And you can email us at shouldn'thavecome@gmail.com if you have any questions. We can provide you sources for things. We can provide you the plug. We can get you the connect. We can get you the hookup. We can get you what you need.
Yeah.
But for the time being, Karen, any parting words that you want to say about Penny Wong to keep the listeners hooked?
But I ain't spending any time on it. But I ain't spending any time on it. But I ain't spending any time on it. Let me be 1,000 lessons. But I ain't spending any time on it.